If you have issues, questions, there's a questions button. You can throw some questions in that chat thing there. And yeah, so we'll get started. Start the ubiquitous, exciting PowerPoint slide here. And then I'll do some demo stuff in our product, netTerrain. So this is fiber and outside plant, software, costs, features, etc. Our customers asked us to create netTerrain OSP for them. If there are other solutions, why didn't they want them? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, and again, just sort of general topics along outside plant. So you obviously had options. I mean, you have options today outside of netTerrain's outside plant. It comes down to looking at different tools that are out there and really seeing which one fits the build, right? Sometimes it's an expense thing. A lot of products out there might be too costly for what you're doing, maybe not for certain companies, but maybe you're trying to just do a small plant, trying to do maybe inside, outside, and other things, and it's just not quite the right fit, you know. So obviously on the spectrum of things you can use, you know, things like Excel, Visio, and so on, AutoCAD, they're not always the greatest fit for what you're doing. Sometimes they're great to start off with. So if you're just starting off, you know, something like Google Earth might be a great way to go in the beginning, but at some point it might not be the right fit moving forward. So things you take into account, right? So the good stuff, you know, again, tools out there that do lots of stuff, lots more than what we do necessarily, but it can come with a high price tag. They also might be part of bigger packages, things you don't necessarily need, but you might. So good things to look at. If you're, you know, looking at, it kind of depends on really ultimately what it is you're looking to do. And I'll obviously talk about kind of what we do, but affordable and efficient. It could be something like a pure, more desktop tool. It's not web-based. Can't have multiple users, or if you do, you got to have licenses for each one, or there's a high cost for the licenses for each one, and things like that. Limited or no inside plant, no enterprise grade, you know, limited reporting, auditing, and so on. Inside plant being, you know, outside plant's great, but sometimes that outside plant runs inside a building, so hence the inside plant. So it's nice to have the flexibility of really both, right? The ugly stuff, mapping, you know, what kind of mapping does it use, if any? That's where you get into Excel and something like Visio and all those tools. Good tools for what they do, but not necessarily for doing something like this. Custom implementations, certainly AutoCAD is a very powerful tool, but sometimes you really got to get it somewhat customized if you're doing some of the outside plant that at least some of the customers we come across. Detailed fiber-based information, no built-in business rules, etc. So that's where we come in, netTerrain outside plant tool. So sort of bridging the gap in capabilities, user capabilities, and what your guys might be looking for. So netTerrain, we got price, features, and flexibility. Well, at least we think we do. So if you want to see a more full demo after this, this is just a quick overview, talking about outside plant netTerrain, a little bit about our tool and what we do. But if you want a more detailed view, questions, detailed information about pricing, that type of thing, just hit us up on the website, give us a call, however you want to do it, and email. We can talk to you in more detail about that. So with that said, let me close this. Let me get to this screen here. Let me make sure you guys are seeing this. Yep, I think so. So this is netTerrain. So netTerrain is a web-based tool. We have a cloud version, or you can get a hosted version of the software. I mean, you can host it yourself, so you don't need the cloud if you don't want it. basically runs on Windows, SQL Server database, and so on. Multi-user environment, user password gets you in the system. There's different user roles, et cetera, things like that you probably pretty much expect anyway. And then on the right here, we've got our what we call the catalog of object types, and that helps us build our drawings. So we're really a hierarchical tool, so you sort of double-click and drill down, and you can get into sort of more and more detail as you navigate the system. The hierarchy is not fixed. It's really up to you. The thing you may care about is simply logging in and seeing 2 or 3 buildings and then cables that run between them, right? Or you might have multiple locations. You need to see a map and where the locations are and so on. So in our case, when we're talking about outside plant, I'm going to go down into this particular diagram, which is, again, kind of just set up for this demo, just showing off features, functionality, help answer questions. So you'll see there's a map, and I'm going to zoom in a bit. The little circles just tell you that there's something in that area, some quantity of objects in that area, just to help you locate things. Because if you're looking at a map of, the whole U.S., and they're really tiny objects at street level, you're not really going to see them. So you have to have something. So we have that halo there. So if we drill down here, you're going to see, in this case, you're going to see different buildings. I can click on a building, click on a building, click on a building, and so on. And here I've got cables running, between the buildings, running between different objects. Got a enclosure there, manhole here, and so on. And I'm just zooming in and out using my mouse wheel kind of thing. So we allow you to, again, this is where kind of you get inside and outside, right? Because a building is going to have stuff inside of it where the cable, your ducts, cables, conduits are going to run inside the building. So you might have a picture of a building, show the floor, and that kind of thing. Now, you don't have to get into this level of detail if all you care about is showing maybe the cable running into the building and it connecting to some patch panel or something. You could certainly do that, right? This is a little more detailed because it's showing some racks and other things. So it's kind of showing off some of the inside plant. But I'm actually driving down into this inside plant thing because I'm going to show a connection, a cable that basically runs outside as well. So sort of a little of both. So I have a cable here that's technically running into the building, and it is inside. It's contained inside another cable. In fact, on the left-hand side of the screen here, it says containers, and I can click on that number 1 there, and it's basically telling me that this particular cable lives inside this other container cable, which is a conduit. So, and that conduit actually can live inside something else too. It might live inside the duct, which it does on the map. So in netTerrain, you have this ability to create these relationships between your cables. So you could go duct, conduit, or multiple conduits, conduit to cables, or multiple cables, and so on. So let me go back to where I was. So if we look at this particular view, and I give it a second. Sometimes the go-to meeting takes a little time to catch up with everybody. There we go. So this particular cable is a cable that has strands in it. So with netTerrain, you have cables. You have different cable types, but also you can have cables that are created that you assign strands to. You say, hey, this is a 24-strand cable, or 50, or 100, whatever it is. And on the left-hand side of the screen, it's in red. It's a little hard to read. But if I go hover and I click on the strand count, it brings up an interface for me. That interface is showing me. It's basically telling me, hey, here's here's my ports, or here's my interface. My mouse seems to have gotten stuck. And here's the colors, buffer tube, strands. We have the color, which means the green means that that particular strand in the cable is connected on each end. And if I click on it, it will show me the interface for all the strands. So that's a strand 1, and it goes from port 9F of this device in this building to port 11 of this device. And I can actually click on that port. It'll take me to it. But if I want to see any of the other ports, port 15, click on it, and then it'll show me what it's connected to. So this is the interface that allows me to create connections for my strands, but also see which ones are in fact connected. This view shows me all the strands that are currently connected. I can set statuses. I can say, okay, this strand is active. It should be. This one's actually flagged as bad, but it's connected. That's up to you. I just set it up that way. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. I'll let you guys look at that for 1 second. So, and these statuses, these are things you can control. Customer name, comments. These are just columns of data that you can create to associate with a strand. So if there's something you want to capture, like a customer name, you know this strand is associated with a customer, you can certainly do that. Okay. And you can flag these as being excluded from our algorithm that creates circuit paths and so on. So if you know it's bad, you can say, oh, don't include that in the algorithm when you are creating circuit paths, which I can talk about and show in just a second. So the nice thing about when you get into this creating these connections and these views, and you have all this data where everything's connected, is you can start to get into showing the physical path views. So what is this physical path view? Well, that's a CLR view. So that's basically showing you what I'm connected to, in between, and so on. This is not the view I wanted to show. I wanted to show an endpoint port. That was just a cable, which is device to device. I wanted to show an actual endpoint device. So let me go back for a second. So the CLR allows you to do physical paths. If you're standing in a data center somewhere and you're looking at a port and you're looking at it going, well, what does this connect to? Well, that first hop, that might be easy to figure out. You might be able to, trace it back behind it or the patch panel it's on or whatever the case may be. But, when you want to see the full path, this starts here and goes through 10 patch panels and goes outside plant, inside plant, and so on. That's a little harder to figure out. So that's really what this view is meant to do. It's there to show you that full physical path, and it's just basically created on the fly based on the information the system knows about all these connections, right? So what you end up with is this view of those, and again, the physical connections I'm talking about are what you see, which is the port-to-port stuff, right? It's the end point. What are we ultimately connecting up to? Let me move this thing out of the way. I can't seem to get that to behave anyway. All right, so let me zoom in a bit. So you've got a port. You've got a port inside this device, which is in this rack, which is in this floor, and so on, right? And that port connects to this port, which is part of a card, which is inside this patch panel, inside this rack. So the blue column, we call it the Swimlane. It's basically the hierarchy of the port. And then left to right or right to left, that's the physical connection. This port connects to here, this port connects to here, this one connects to here, this connects to here, and so on. This is, if there's strands, it's got a little dot. That means there's a strand in between these. So I can click on the strand and see the strand. And then I can follow the path. What does it connect to? Well, this follows a path of, it starts here in this building, and it goes through the bioresearch building, goes out of bioresearch, goes through a manhole, goes out of manhole through an enclosure, through another manhole, through another enclosure, all the way until it gets to a whole different building, Jimenez Hall. Okay. So you can trace these full physical paths and see where, kind of where you are in this, where you're starting, where you're ending, what's in between. It's going to help you troubleshoot. If you got something broken, you need to know the path. Hey, where am I going to check? Well, you sort of know all the pieces in between. So it's one thing you can do, certainly. Something else you can do with outside plant when you get into using, especially fiber strands, doing all these connections and views and so on, is you can generate, I call it, let me go up to the map view. We call it the ACRA. It's an algorithm. It allows the system to determine a path for you between 2 points. So if you have lots of strands, right, lots of infrastructure, cables, strands, and so on, they're connected, some are in use, some aren't in use, and so on, and you want the system to figure out, all right, first, is there a path between these two buildings based on all the information? And if there is a path, is there a redundant path? But if there is a path, can I then reserve the path, all the strands in between? Will the system also tell me, hey, there's some patching that needs to be done, and so on? So I can come down and let me bring this thing down. Go to my tools, circuit, create new. So this is telling me that I selected two. I should have walked you through this for a second. So I've got my two buildings. Hey, what's the path between the two buildings? If there is one, I go up here and say create a new circuit path. There's a 3-hop and a 4-hop path. If I click on the 4-hop, it's going to highlight it for me, the path. So I can see that in the background there. The 3-hop path, I can click on it. It'll show me that one. It shows me what the path is, bioresearch to manhole, plant science, and the 4-hop path, right? I can even go in and I can exclude things if I needed to. I can see what cable it's picking. I can see what strands it's picking. I can override that if I want to. So I can choose whether this is an edge-to-edge or an end-to-end. End-to-end's typically, router to router, switch to switch, whatever you're doing end-to-end. Edge-to-edge is typically more patch-to-patch in the buildings kind of thing. So you can go in and choose what those endpoints are and select the equipment that you want to connect up. So I want to connect first floor to something in the science building, right? And then you go through the process of selecting that, choosing what those connections are going to be, and then having the system effectively create the path, okay? And then it reserves the path. It reserves the information in the path. I think I have a circuit already, maybe. I guess I have a couple in here, but it tells you the number of hops and so on. So this one still is around. I can do a view it on the map, and it'll show me that particular circuit path that's reserved. And you can have as many circuits as you want to create. Again, it goes in reserves and sort of does all these things for you there. So I got to zoom in a bit to see this. So but you can also see the circuit layout record for the circuit too. So what does that full path look like, and so on. So with that said, I'm kind of starting to run out of time here, but I wanted to see if there's any questions. If you want to, again, fuller demo, you want to see more information, ask more questions, or whatever the case may be, by all means, let us know. But if that was helpful, it gives you an overview of some of the stuff we do. There's definitely more features and functionality in the tool. I just wanted to focus more on a little bit of the outside plant, obviously, and kind of walk through that a little bit. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. Let's see here. Oh. So let me see. Can you import stuff into netTerrain, Google Earth specifically, it looks like? Yeah, so you can definitely, we can do CAMZ, CAML import into netTerrain. So if you have some data to get you started, if you have stuff in spreadsheets, we can do spreadsheet imports. We have connections to API systems. We can do database pulls, other things. So if you have data, it's not really a problem. Latitude and longitude, yes. You can import if you know the latitude and longitude. So I didn't mention this, and I should have. So we have an integration with Openstreetmaps. So you can lay the map. It's very easy to select a map, and once that's selected, if you do an import and you have the latitude and longitude data, it will position the objects and place them where they belong. So, and let's see. Man, I gotta get better at these pop-outs here. Oh, that's better. Max number of hops in a full view. There's really no max number. It's just generated on the fly. So you just, from left to right, you just have to start sort of scrolling left to right. Of course, it takes longer to generate, but there's really no fixed limit on how many hops it can have. And I have customers that they don't necessarily want to see the GUI CLR. We also do report CLRs. So you generate a report, and it basically in a report it tells you the CLR for a whole switch. And so you get this table view of here's port 1, here's its hop, here's its next hop, and so on. And that may be 10 or 20 hops wide. And so, but then you can do it more as a whole for like a whole switch or router. The other thing I was showing you was obviously in the GUI, but that's really only one path at a time where doing it as sort of a report, you can do a whole switch at one time if you want. So, can you provide a bill of material report for a technician? Yeah, you can. Reports, we have some canned reports. A lot of reports we do based on the customer. You ask us for them, we'll generate them for you, create them, put them on your, give them to you to put in your system. We have our own reporting engine, so you can learn how to use that, or you can request them from us when you're a customer. It's up to you. And we also have some built-in BOM reports too. That CLR, I should say the circuit tool, where it creates the circuit path, reserves the circuits, also creates a list of patching that needs to be done. There's a bill of material built into that already that can be generated. Reporting capabilities. Reporting capabilities are really unlimited. You can use your own reporting tool, our reporting tool, request reports, generate your own. Can you show project costs in a BOM too, like data field on cables? Yeah. So data is up to you as far as what you capture. So if you want to capture the cost of an object in netTerrain, you just add a field for the cost. So the fields are totally user-definable, user-defined even, easy to add. You have to be a certain user type. You have to be a power user or an admin to do it. But yeah, no problem. How secure is data in the cloud? User password, I guess it depends on the security you're looking for. We have different models for hosting cloud. Is really kind of up to you and what you select. The basic hosting is, we host on a platform. Everybody has their own database. It's all separated as far as the instances, same hardware. If you prefer your own hardware, we can separate you out, so your own hardware in the cloud, and kind of go from there. So we sort of tailor it to your needs, kind of thing. So I hope that answered that question. Can you show which side of the road the cable is on the pole number? Yeah, there's in Openstreetmaps, of course, you can see the street, so you can lay the cable on which side of the road it's on. You can put a cable, you can put a pole in. I didn't show poles in mine. I usually show manholes and just the enclosures. But you can show it which side it's on. It's not going to move. It'll stay where it's supposed to be. integrate with Nlight DCM. Depends on the integration you want to do. We have a full API suite, so if you want to pull or push data, you can use our APIs. If you're just going to do a data dump from Nlight and you want to import it, that depends on Nlight. I really can't comment on how you get data out of their system. So let's see, lots of questions. How many users? There's really no limit on the number of users or concurrent users. Concurrency, if you're talking about 100 concurrent users versus 2, you need different hardware. You're not going to run 100 concurrent users on a standard laptop or something. That's not going to work. But certainly if you've got a lot of concurrent users. I mean, we have very large customers that do concurrent all the time, but of course they have, bigger and better hardware, but nothing outlandish either. They're not, it's typical VM environments, 4 CPUs and 32 gig of RAM maybe if it's a higher end thing, database separate type stuff. Nothing terrible. Can you capture different types of connectors? Yeah. So for a given port object, you can define the connector type, LC, SC, ST, whatever connector types you have. It's just a data point that you can define. In fact, I have customers that do what we call visual override. So if you choose an LC connector, it actually looks like an LC or RJ45 or even power. They do a lot with power too, so they'll do changes there. On-premise requirements. Windows Server or SQL Server database. That's about it. I run this on my laptop. Runs perfectly well. I'm not saying that I would necessarily do that with, a whole bunch of concurrent users or something, but actually for a couple users, that's fine. Works pretty well. I mean, typically we'll tell you to do like 2016 server or something like that, but again, you can run it all in VMs if you want. Do your maps just only show street maps, or what about satellite? Yeah, that's a great question. We don't do satellite views. That's Openstreetmaps, so whatever OSM does, you can go to openstreetmap.org and see their maps. That's what we use. There are some alternate views in OpenStreetMaps you can apply, I think, with an API key, but space map. If you need satellite views, yeah, we're probably not the tool of choice for you guys. OSP have the ability to track cable lengths. Yeah, that can be a data field. We can do a calculation as well. You can right-click on a cable in an outside plant map, and it'll do a calculation. And we can read that length as well. How is it licensed? It's usually an object count. In the cloud, I think we also make a matrix of objects and users just to, because some people using the cloud, it's just one guy, right, doing some documentation. So, but that's really I'm not the sales guy, so I would call in if you want more detailed sort of pricing. But it scales, so we start pretty low from a standpoint of quantities, but cost as well. So if you're not trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, it can be very cost effective. Let's see. Does your OSP have the ability to track cable, have a license? Dollar model. I assume that is a licensing thing, right? That's what I assume. So, it's priced by the number of fiber termination points. I don't know if that's a good way to view it. I would call in and we can tell you what the more effectively. It kind of depends on your environment. It's really it's really a number of objects for the most part. But with outside plant, it's a little different. But I would just give us a shout and we can tell you more details. Yeah. So thanks for all the questions, guys. It's been great. If you need anything, just give us a shout. Take care.